There is anything I love is to hear stories like yours. They really inspire me. You know, I really get so elevated when I hear impossible, become possible. And it's just if anybody would have asked me a few years ago, do you think you're ever going to have a student who is one day going to win an Emmy Award? I said, yeah, it's possible, but I would have never thought who it is. And now that I finally discovered, that person.
But you demystified a lot of these things for me. Your technology, quite honestly, the things you have developed really kind of made this much more of a breeze. As everybody who makes movies knows, anything that can go wrong will go wrong. And the winner is Trilogy, It's in the Heart by Pacific Storytellers. It wasn't actually this one, it was like a prop because they hand you the real one with all the information on it backstage.
Since I started teaching color grading more than 20 years ago, I always used to joke that one day one of my students is going to win an award, and I wanted them to thank me for that. And I never knew really who that person is going to be, but I knew it was going to happen. And actually, it did happen. It did happen. One of our students has won an Emmy for the best documentary, and I just couldn't resist and talk to him about this incredible journey he made. And I believe that many of you are going to be inspired by his story. So, looking forward to welcome you to this podcast. So, Stephen, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so happy to finally connect with you. We've been in contact for a while, and I actually, really thought about this. How could I, connect? How could I tell your story to my audience? And once you kind of, you let me know that you won an Emmy Award, I just said, this now has to happen. This is the moment. This is the moment where I need to talk to you because I feel that your story is inspirational. And I think that what you have achieved is just absolutely amazing. It's a dream come true for most of us, at least for me, it would have been. If I had an Emmy in my hand, I think I would have been definitely feeling this if I made it. But as you know, I always like to start these stories, these podcasts with one simple question, which is, how did you end up being a colorist that you are? And how did your story start, and how did you come to the place where you are right now?
Wow. Well, first of all, I would say that, especially with your audience being who they are, I'm not even so sure I would call myself a colorist. I studied with you, and I feel like I just scratched the surface. But let me backtrack real quick. So I was originally born in Germany. My mother's Austrian and my father is German, and we emigrated to the New York area when I was just 3. And I ended up going to a German school there, a foreign school in New York, and ended up going to college there. And come senior year, you gotta make a choice. What are you gonna do with yourself? What's your profession, right? I went to a pretty good college, and my friends are like, oh, pre-med, pre-law, Wall Street, this, that, and the other. And I just looked around and I thought to myself, this all doesn't feel right. And the only thing that ever came to mind was a one-way ticket to Maui, Hawaii. Um, yeah, yeah, well, for one thing, I started windsurfing when I was 12 on the Long Island Sound, and I got hooked. I got hooked by the freedom of being able to piece together some kit. There's some wind, and the dynamics push you forward, right? Without an engine, without fuel, without anything. Just you put it together, and you get, you learn how to direct these things, and boom, off you go. And you could go as far as you want, you could go as not far as you, whatever. So, it, for me, as a teenager, it was really my safe spot, right? Where I was free from any sort of drama having to do with friends or school or any of that stuff. And I was just hooked. So that was probably the impetus for it. But also, I wanted to see what it was like to cast away all the security blankets that I grew up with in the New York area with friends and family around, and to see what was just left standing in the end. Go to a place like this, as far west as I could get, still being technically the United States, although some people dispute that, but let's not get into that. Right after college, I came out here, one-way ticket, and I had maybe $1,725 to my name. And so, what do you do now? Well, I bought an old rust bucket Toyota Camry 1984, and yeah, and what do? You start jobbing around. I mean, I went to a good college, and I thought, well, I still got to do something serious. So, what's serious around here? Okay, hospitality. I'd been working in restaurants all my life, as a teenager and whatnot. Like many people do work in restaurants at that age. So that I can do that. So I got into hospitality at a resort here. Yeah, and just started working my way up management. Yeah, which is this is kind of out of left field for a colorist podcast. But, I think where the hard swerve came was when I realized, man, I mean, I really appreciated, that Ohana feeling that they gave me. Ohana means family, right? They really took me in and really were my soft landing into a foreign place. So I'm so super grateful, but I felt like I was just a cog in a big machine, and there was nothing creative. Well, you got to kind of be creative in dealing with challenging guests, but I wasn't getting any of the creative outlet that I really was hoping for. And mind you, I hadn't studied film. I dabbled with photography, but hobbyist at most. So I started moonlighting as a wedding photographer, and I don't even know how some of these wedding planners allowed me into that position because I didn't know what I was doing whatsoever. Like, no idea, right? Like, I would come back with these photos of this couple's special moment, well, a lot of people, what's the divorce rate these days? 51%, so 50%. So whatever. Yeah, I was gonna say for a lot of people it's once in a lifetime, but for a lot of people not. Anyways, and I remember coming back and looking at these photos, and I shot. This was when the I think it was the Canon 60D. It was sort of the first decent digital camera, and I bought some L glass, a 70 to 200, and a 24 to 70. I thought, oh, I got it covered. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh shit, dude. I came back and I'm underexposed, completely underexposed, completely over. Like it was just a disaster, you know? And I was like, oh God. Yeah.
So how did you learn? I mean, how did you, explore it? Was there anybody there to show you, or what were your resources?
Not not really. YouTube was not really a thing yet, but I do recall thinking to myself, well, I can't just show up and put it on green mode or P for program mode. And so I started thinking, well, let's try this M mode for manual, right? Or you would have to set your shutter, you set your aperture, and then see. And since it was digital, I could take a picture and then see right away what I was producing. And so I found that just by doing that, helped me a lot, understanding what I was capturing in the moment and what it might look like, in the actual photograph afterwards. Since it was an SLR, you couldn't actually see what your exposure was. So, and then I started going to some photo workshops with some local photographers here. I got this opportunity somebody said, hey, you know what you should do? You should webcast weddings from the beach. So webcast weddings from the beach. And I go, okay, that sounds like, it's a destination wedding spot. Okay, let's try this. So internet was really shitty at the time, right? The bandwidth. But I would put a table on the beach, plop a computer on it, and hook up a car battery, like just so silly. But yeah, so firewire out of an old, mini DV Canon XHA1 into the computer and over two clear wire modems, and I would broadcast these things from the beach. So that's how I got into video.
Oh my
And
God, this is crazy.
yeah,
But what a great idea. Think about it. You are like for all the family that couldn't come,
yeah,
we have a live stream. I love it. I
yes,
love it. I love
yes.
it.
Yeah, and so brides would say like, "Hey, can you also make us a little video of this then?" And so, okay. And again, at the time, I didn't know anything about 180 shutter degree rule or anything, right? And I just remember like I was shooting some wedding somewhere, and I believe I had the XHA1 on on like green, and it suddenly I came back and it had this, staccato look, which was, just like you think Born Identity fight scene, right? But it was a wedding. I'm like, oh shit, what did I do? And that's when I realized, oh my God, there's something to this. Okay, what is it? And then, like, a buddy of mine said, dude, you gotta keep the shutter speed twice the frame rate, man. Really? I have no idea. So just like picking up one after the other. I mean, and by the way, this was many years ago. It's not like this was last year and suddenly I won an Emmy. So a
Yeah, yeah,
lot has
yeah, yeah,
happened
yeah,
since
yeah. No, no, no. I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. I mean, this is we're talking about the Canon XL1, right? So that must have been many years ago.
then. XHA1, yeah, yeah, with the
XH1. Yeah,
mini
yeah,
D.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
love that camera actually. They had interchangeable lenses, I believe, isn't it?
Not that one. You're thinking of the Big Daddy, the one that was sort of like a
Yeah,
banana.
yeah. That's what I
Yeah,
thought.
no, that
Ah, no,
was
no,
the
no.
X. This was the sort of the younger sibling of it, the more affordable one.
Oh, okay, okay,
Yep.
okay, okay,
It had
okay.
nice L. It had a nice optics, but it was fixed.
It was fixed. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, mini DV era. I remember.
Yeah.
Even my wedding was on a mini DV.
Oh yeah. Great. Do you still watch it? I'm wondering.
No, I don't think so.
No.
I don't know. I don't know where it is anymore. The
let,
photos are
let, let,
still around, but those mini DV tapes, I wouldn't even be able to play. I mean, I have to go to some
no,
sort
I
of,
know.
you
Oh
know, to
my
some
God.
photo place, to transfer it or something. God knows what I would do with it. So basically, so you start getting more and more into the video
Yes.
photography, and I mean, by doing weddings, which is kind of a steady stream of income effectively,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And but I believe like slowly you wanted to kind of do a little bit more challenging things than just the weddings. Is this correct?
Absolutely. What was bothering me was that you show up, shoot the shit out of everything, and then make something up in post, right? You just cobble together something in post, because couples, all they really want is for you to record their day, especially here with the beautiful Hawaii scenery, the Mai Tais, the hula, the everything. This was probably around 2015 or so that I thought I gotta do a couple of things. One, understand storytelling a bit more because I thought I was doing storytelling, right? Creating something in post. And then the other thing I thought a few years later was, gosh, I need to do better at sales and marketing. Like I need to understand how to actually understand the psychology of sales. And then the third thing was color grading, which is where you came in and around the pandemic. The storytelling, took a class with this production company in Portland, Oregon called Muse Storytelling. And so what they did, what this guy Patrick Moreau did, was he distilled and codified and really simplified in a way that people could understand the essential plot points of the hero's journey, right? But without the whole thing. It was six essential plot points. When you hit those, you're more likely going to be able to affect an audience. Touch the heart to move the mind is what they said. I don't know how much you know about Robert McKee, but he's sort of like,
No, I don't know him, but now
no,
now I will find out.
what he would write in a book this big, this fat. They were able to distill with nuanced differences, but he pretty much says, look, there is a plot structure that has been proven to work in audiences. Yeah, you could go do something avant-garde, and a very small subsection of an audience will appreciate it just because they like something different. But by and large, the general population will respond to a certain plot structure, right? So this is what I started really getting into and trying to sell. I tried it first with weddings, thinking that a couple would want to tell their story, right? So I started thinking, oh, I could market myself as that wedding storyteller, right? But I totally misjudged the market because, again, I realized in hindsight that people just come and shoot, and this is my Hawaii day. Let's not overcomplicate this,
Yes,
So
yes, I understand.
yeah,
Not every
yeah,
couple would want that. There are probably few that would really
yeah,
appreciate it, but
yeah,
majority not. Yes, I believe
yeah.
that. Yeah.
So all the while, I'm trying to understand, like, okay, how do I continue to make a living, right? We had just bought a house, which in Hawaii is no small feat.
No,
We
yeah.
got we have a daughter. She was born in 2010, so you got to keep the engine churning, right? I also feel like the same reason I quit the hospitality, the resort, I felt like there needs to be some evolution in what I'm doing. So slowly but surely, I was able to get a few gigs here and there, slowly inject this storytelling stuff. And then the pandemic happened, and then I asked myself, well, now I'm stuck inside here. What am I going to do? Besides story, what is another huge way that I'm not seeing many, especially around here, really mastering, really understanding, really leveraging? And it was color grading. Like, all our images look the same. Like, it's all that Sony, video look, or they might be using Canon, but whatever. It's video-y, that magenta. You know all about it. So I thought, well, what can I do? And that's when I bumped into you, and I just soaked up every possible thing I could.
Interesting, you say that because like when I was starting as a colorist, right? And I also, by the way, was working in a restaurant, and because of my accent, I was told I should be a wine waiter because people will buy more expensive wines if you have accent like mine.
I love it.
So I've done that as well. When I desperately wanted to learn color grading back then, there wasn't any place. So I ended up in LA, and then after I finished the school, I realized they didn't teach me anything except how to operate DaVinci Resolve. But no, they told me how to grade, right?
Yeah.
So what I did was I ended up here like working as long as my visa lasted. I think it was like 6 months or something, a little bit less than 6 months, working for very back then even like a very senior colorist. And interestingly, he taught me like some color grading, but most of the time he was teaching me storytelling, and he would bring like a little those little books of scripts, like a movie scripts that they get
Yeah.
reprinted that you buy sometimes on like a boardwalk on Hollywood, like there's these
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
selling right there. And then he would bring those, and he would like give me one and say, okay, open page 24. And I would open page 20. What's happening? Ah, look. And then we take another script book. Open page 24. What's happening?
Yeah.
Oh my God, similar things happening. And then he
Yeah.
told me about the reels, about the changes. And I
Yeah.
was thinking, wow, I now understand the color grading. I now understand it's not just color grading, like making images look beautiful. It's telling story. It's the story. If I don't understand the story, I will never understand color grading. And it was really like, thank God for him. Like, because really what he did is he completely changed my view on it, and I'm so happy to see that you came from a similar desire. You learn story, you understand the story, and now you're looking for a better way how to tell it instead of just how technically I can perfect my image, which is okay, we can do this, but what's the purpose? Why are we doing it? To tell the story. I love
Right.
it. I love it.
Yeah.
So you started training with me on my doing some online courses, isn't it? That I started doing back then around pandemic, because up to that time I was mainly in a classroom, right?
Oh, really? So it was the pandemic that got you online? Well, see, I mean, just as a sidebar, I know that the pandemic was so challenging for so many people. To me, it was one of these things that is so flung me out of my normal orbit of daily operation, that it was almost, God, how do I put this without being, potentially hurtful to anyone who had a really hard time during the pandemic? But like, this is a silver lining, is what I'm saying. Like, the fact that you got out of the classroom, were forced to get out of the classroom and online, and here I was in the middle of the Pacific, thinking I got to get stronger at this because it's a differentiating factor. It underscores what the story is supposed to say, right? It aids in all these things. And so I have zero comprehension of it. I was breaking the image, like, just as crappy as I was doing at those early weddings, that I was making the most boneheaded mistakes. And when I saw you, just going through this, is, I don't want to show you any particular process or method. This is just, I'm showing you a broad plethora of things that you can do, so you can grab into the toolbox. And I was like, wow, I don't know. It just blew me away. And it gave me and I'm not a colorist by any stretch. So if anybody checks out my stuff and like wonders how did this guy get on Dado's, podcast, but it gave me the confidence to experiment, and it gave me enough technical background to know when I'm doing something wrong, right? Like,
That's the point, isn't it? When you know
yeah,
enough theory that
yeah,
you understand when something's wrong, what's wrong, then you don't need me. You
yeah,
know, you can then learn. Then you can teach yourself by doing, right? You don't need,
yeah,
somebody to constantly tell you this is wrong, this we do this better, right? Once
yeah,
you know, once you understand, once you figure out, that's really what makes you a colorist. That's exactly what I'm keep saying. Certainly, like if you want to go like Stephen, if you would ever want to be like a professional, colorist, and sell your service of color grading to other people, then that's another level, and that involves certain things that are not just, like, oh, I'm able to tell story and grade. No, that it's like you are servicing other people, so there is a lot of, much more involved in it than you just doing your grading, right? So
yeah.
that certainly involves like some business presentations, different challenges, different types of
Oh
grading
yeah.
and so on, so that it's, you can expand on that. But I 100% agree with you on a statement that once you know when something's wrong, what's wrong, then you're basically able to, do everything right if you're able to fix it
Yeah.
yourself. I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. So basically you figured out a little bit, grading, but you grade. I mean, you must be still doing a lot of productions still. There is like, some weddings going on that you now grade and so on. And I remember I was receiving emails from you asking me like all these interesting questions. I remember that. And then how did this project come along that you just won Emmy award for? Because this is unbelievable.
So it's called Trilogy. It's in the heart. And by the way, that name didn't really come up until much later in the creative process. Back up just a little, as I was trying to do things in addition to weddings being a good, a financial pillar, revenue generating pillar. I wanted to do other things, like I'd mentioned. And all the while, I'm doing pro bono things just to like show people, like, hey, there's something to this storytelling. So I did this project for somebody who I knew, and she's actually a makeup artist, and her family owns this tour boat operating company. It's called Trilogy. It's based here in Maui, and they do trips Maui and Lanai. And so I had done a few things for her pro bono, think projects that she wanted done, and then cut to 2021 pandemic ish, and she asked to have a lunch with me, and she tells me, well, hey, look, my family is the Trilogy is celebrating its 50th anniversary year in business. It's going to be in 2023 May 6th, or in May is when the gala is going to be, sort of the event, and we want some kind of a film done. I can't tell you more than that. So I said, wow, I'm very much interested. Sure. Well, so we had a wonderful rest of the lunch. And then I end up going into a meeting with the board there, and they tell me more about what they want. And I'm asking them, okay, what is this for? Who is the audience? What do you need this piece to do for you? Slowly but surely it came into focus that, okay, they wanted an origin story because their origins had never really been told. And it's a very interesting story. They started in Alaska, and I showed them a piece I had done for somebody else, some nonprofit here, and it incorporated all these storytelling elements, right? People, people being the emitter of emotion, the carrier of emotion, right? As we know in movies, if the acting, for instance, falls short, well, then the whole movie is off kilter because the message doesn't come through. In a documentary, if you choose your people not wisely, and they don't have the emotion, they don't have the passion, the desire, the motivation thing that gets in the way of that, which creates this conflict. If that's not there, well, you're not going to hit the mark. So I started understanding these things, and so I showed the board this room full of decision makers. This piece I did for a nonprofit had all the lovely ingredients. It was about learning and kids and all these sorts of things, which was really a tearjerker, and it really touched their heart. It says that this is what we want. What's it going to cost? What do we do? I was able to get them to yes.
Ah, okay.
Which was really just a first step. And that was really understanding and really explaining to them the process of the storytelling, right? That I need to pre-interview a lot of people because I want to find the right people to include in this thing, right? And get at the real story. And So I can share my screen here.
Really nice. So,
Yeah.
so what are you going to show us? Like, is your development document? Is this what we're going to be looking at now?
Yeah, so, well, there's two documents. There's a pitch document that I do, which is really before any of the pre-production stuff that comes into play. It's really a document that sells them on it. But this isn't that. This is the creative brief that came after I had pre-interviewed anybody in the story or story universe that was potential. This is the document that I presented to them to show them and tell the story that they can see in their mind's eye before we ever picked up a camera. You see? So so that
Okay.
they can sign off on it and say, "Yes, okay, great, let's move." Right?
Okay. Okay.
So that's what this document
Let's have a look at it. I'm terribly sorry for interrupting, but I just have to tell you about something really interesting. If this is a type of content you really like, I wanted to let you know about a group we have created called the Art of Color Research Group, where if you become a member, you get every month new seminars, new guest lectures, and also you get access to the world's biggest library of research papers on subject of color grading, as well as a library of more than 20 guest lectures by some of the Hollywood's biggest, and also library of seminars on subjects like DCP, ACES, color management, camera matching, live grading, and so on and so on. Also, you have a chance to use a special GPT tool that's going to help you develop your own DCTLs. You get access to some really cool tools for color management and LUT design, and you just become part of this amazing colorist research community. Head over to color.training and look for Art of Color Research Group.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so I always want to start with the purpose in mind. Why are we doing this? And I want to make sure that we are on the same page. That's what this document is supposed to do. So that, when all is said and done and there are objections to anything, I can come back to this document and say, "Hey, look, but this was the purpose. This is what we all agreed on was the purpose." And I codified, "Hey, why are we making this film? Okay, it's their 50th anniversary year. They have a strong story to tell, and they had so much archival footage, 16 millimeter from the 60s and 70s. I knew that there was a lot of footage that we could use to really layer over the interview. And then I tried to codify sort of what the spirit of this whole thing is in keywords, right? And there are certain keyword prompts. A lot of this stuff is from Muse storytelling, by the way. So I would ask myself, well, what is the inspiration of this all? And I would come up with this leap of faith, right? What's different about this story? Well, they're very authentic. And as I was doing this, I was thinking to myself, well, this is also an incredible way for this business to differentiate themselves, right? In a sea of competition here, right? Because nobody else has their story, right? So if we tell this story well, then nobody can claim this. And so if this story, if they use it afterwards for marketing or whatever, sales, it can have legs far beyond just showing it at a big party with 500 people in attendance. I was like, wow, okay. So now I'm starting to tell them, okay, I feel like this has potential for you in so many other ways. In any event, these are sort of the key words that came to mind, and I would run these by them, and they would say, "Yeah, that's good. Maybe we should change it to this." So then, this way, with every creative decision we made later, we could come back to this and say, "Hey, is the creative decision, the technical decision, whatever it is, does it serve this?" Does it roll back up to this? And does it roll back up to the purpose, right? So it's very intentional, everything. We would look through all the people in the story, and they need strong desire. They need to want something super badly. And there's got to be a deep-seated reason for it, right? And they've got to be somewhat unique. In this case, there were two founders. I needed to work with them, which is fine because luckily they were strong. And these were the two. Jim Kuhn and his brother Randy Kuhn, they started it with the patriarch. So their father is the story, and they tell
His
the story,
story.
yeah, from their perspective.
Is this why it's
And
called the trilogy? Is this the trilogy that where the trilogy comes from, right?
right, yes. And also there is also the boat that they built together in the 60s was a trimaran, so hence three, trilogy.
Ah.
And also they're quite, how do I say this? Well, they're Christian, right? So the Trinity trilogy. So there's a faith aspect in it too.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
So so here were those plot points that I was telling you
I
about,
love
right?
it. I love, I actually teach very similar in color grading, actually, exactly the way
Yeah.
so you do it. I love it. I love it.
So here is basically a, you know, a storyboard with some random photos. It's a lot more verbose than I think it should be, but I really got deep into the weeds there. Um, So here we knew we had a blueprint going into production. Like, okay, what did we need to hit? Okay, it's really served as the blueprint, just like you would want a blueprint to build a house when it came time for production. And it really saved our hide because, you know, with sailing, we're dependent on the weather a lot. So, you know, as everybody who is makes movies or makes video or works in this field knows, anything that can go wrong will go wrong. So, you know, so
Yes.
this helped us stay anchored and on mission.
Interesting. So tell me, so now they said, okay, this is it. We're green lighting it. It sounds like we this is exactly what we want. And then how did you proceed? How did you put it all together? What was the crew like? What was the shooting schedule? Who edited? How did all of that happen?
Right. So I knew that if I'm going to direct this and get the emotions out of people, I needed to let go of control of the image, and I needed to trust somebody else. During the pandemic, I took a course in sales and marketing for, you know, filmmakers,
Mm-hmm.
you know, how to market yourself. And one of the people in that, his name is Jay Worsley. He's based out of Phoenix, and yeah, he does just such wonderful work. And I asked him, hey, you doing anything? I forgot when we shot this. Was it February, March, or something of 2023? And he said, I've got time that week. So I flew him out, and this is the first time I've ever worked with him. So, you know, we had a rapport via Zoom and everything, but I never met him in person. The first time I ever touched him in the flesh was, you know, at the airport when I picked him up. You know, it's very interesting, but you know, his work is amazing, and he gets a lot of work. So other people seem to think, you know, he's the bee's knees as well. And then the other person that I work closely with, another guy here. He's local to Maui, born and raised. Also, just learned by doing. He got in through sound, so he's a sound recorder, and he was on a bunch of movies for many years. Like right after he got out of high school, he was brought on to film sets to do the audio. And so that's how he got into the whole thing. And I've been working with him, and I put him behind the camera, you know, on small projects where, you know, it's not as critical to get everything perfect, which is what a lot of the projects around here are. You got to remember, Maui is such a small market, 150,000 inhabitants on a small island. Budgets are smaller, and therefore the demands are
Yeah,
not
yeah,
as
yeah, yeah, yeah.
stringent.
There is also something about Hawaii. People are really not as strung up as they are, you know,
Right.
in the big cities, you know, and stuff like that. You get me? It's like no one's like a really no one behaves that life depends on the fact that
Right.
you delivered what something an hour later or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you know, people
Yeah.
are not as strict
Yeah.
for sure.
And this guy Reese, and everybody needs a Reese on their team because he's quiet and thoughtful, shares when when the time is right. It's like it's this wonderful zero ego person on the team. It's just lovely. So that was sort of the core team. It was really just the three of us, and then I would bring on a PA to like schlep stuff for the interview setups. I had Jay here for 5 days. There were weather problems. There were issues with one of the brothers. So one of the brothers, Randy, he was scheduled or slated to go to Tahiti with his own boat with his son, and both Randy and the son were part of this film, right? But Randy is a very interesting character. He'll just do what he wants when he wants. Everybody else has just got to deal with it. I love you, Randy, if you're listening to this, but I don't think you will be. In any event, the whole schedule was thrown into upheaval. And then finally he goes, yeah, listen, so there was one excuse after another. He'd be like, yes, listen, we can't do it today because we got to scrub the hull before we head out, and the window of opportunity is closing. And so we just got to do what we got to do, maybe tomorrow. And so tomorrow comes, and, which is for a film production, this is just nuts. Turns
Crazy.
out they bolted, they left. They went to Tahiti on their own boat, and we never got to shoot them. So I'm like, all right, I'm writing this guy out of the script. Okay, whatever. There's nothing I can do.
Oh my God.
So I needed to go back and like revise some things and come up with a new game plan. And also, the first day of shooting with Jay, we got on the boat and we were just shooting some B-roll. Beautiful morning light, the sun coming up over Haleakala, a small crew, a boat crew. It's super idyllic, just so lovely. And here's sort of my, control freakishness. I kept seeing images like, Jay, you get seeing that? You seeing that? You seeing that? And when we got home that night, I looked at the footage, just scrubbed through it, and I'm like, wow, he didn't get that. He didn't get that. Oh, and a lot of stuff is out of focus. So I'm just like,
Ah.
I'm freaking out. But what are you going to do when the entire production rests on you being cool? Because if I somehow lose my shit, the whole thing
Yeah.
is just screwed.
Exactly. Exactly. That's
Yeah.
you can't. This is really what differentiates good from great people. Like the greatest directors or cinematographers I worked with were not losing it.
Right.
They had this way that they treated everybody respectfully. They demand, they're
Yeah.
not that they're
Yeah.
easygoing, but
Yeah.
they have never made anybody feel bad about it. If you know what I mean, like they would
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
just knew how to
Yeah.
deal with these situations. Sometimes where I would feel like I want to kill a guy or girl, whatever, you know what I mean? Like someone screws up like major, right? And I feel like if I be him, I'd be like, and then, they just have this beautiful way how to like, swing things around. And then there are some directors that are such assholes that you never really want to like, when you get an email from their PAs asking if you're free for a job, you say, sorry, I'm booked. Man, I have an auto response for you. I don't know what. Even if you pay me, I don't know what money. If I be unemployed, I'm not gonna take your job again, right? So it's interesting. Yes, you're right. You must keep your cool. This is really what separates great people.
Well, yeah, and the thing is, I was not always like that, and even at that time, I was in real time going into myself and really checking in. I remember the cinematographer, he was sleeping in this very room, and I was in the bedroom with my wife, and I just kind of like, I reached over and I held her. I said, I've got a problem. I told her, I listed all my challenges, and she just handed me her hand, like held out her hand, and I just held her hand. I mean, it sounds so dramatic, but it's like this whole thing could go to hell in a handbasket, you know, right now, if I don't chill the fuck out, you know. And so that touch was like all I really needed. Like, hey, look, it's not the end of the world. You'll figure it out somehow. I believe in you. I don't even remember what she said, but
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah,
it worked.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Interesting. So then, what did you do after you finished the shoot? How did you get all the archive footage?
I believe this was something that I learned from you as well. Da Vinci coming online with all the collaboration modes, got on that super quick, because I remember you were like, hey guys, you guys got to get on this like yesterday and learn how to use it. So I had just gotten fiber optic internet. So I'm like, dude, I'm gonna do this completely. I'm gonna upload everything. The red files. I myself am a Sony user, so I had Sony files. And then I just sent to the client, I sent one of those Dropbox request files links. And then they just dumped it all into the folder that I wanted. So it was perfectly organized in the bin structure that you actually use with, the 001,
Yeah,
or,
yeah,
exactly how you
exactly.
do it,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
is,
yeah.
by the way, how I do all my weddings too now. So all my editors always know exactly how I want it, and it brings order into the whole thing. Anyways,
Yeah, and no, and then wasting stupid time looking
yeah,
for things that it's obvious. I love that. Yes, you're right. You're right.
yeah.
Okay, so remove stupid mistakes. Yes, none of those.
Yeah, exactly. And so all the footage started coming in, and And Reese, the guy I told you everybody needs a Reese on their team. I said, Reese, do you want to edit this? I knew he could edit, and he's got the chops. And he's got the feel, right? He's got the feel, and he had the blueprint. So I said, let's try this. And he started making sense of things. I laid out the basic plot structure in the form of the interview dialogue. And then he would go in and start, trimming and trimming and trimming, because what this guy says here is that screenwriters and people in our profession, whereas author has, hundreds or thousands of pages to write, our real craft is editing, cutting all the unessential stuff, right? So he would go in and just start trimming away the redundancies. Oh, okay, we're already making that point in that statement, and just whittling, and then we would start layering in B-roll where it made sense, and archival. And meanwhile, with this DaVinci collaboration option, I'm already in there fiddling with some color grading. I'm like, okay, interesting. Yeah, while he's working, and I can see he's working on that timeline, and I'm in there just trying things out. What's my hero shot? All these sorts of things. And so it was this wonderful collaborative. He lives in the same town I do, but he's working remotely, and we're doing this all over collaborative cloud.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And then, but tell me, like, this grade must have been hard, because you had so much archive. Then you
Yes.
had like Red and Sony.
Well, can I tell you a little secret? I don't want the I don't know if this disqualifies me, and I gotta give the Emmy back. But I also actually use stock footage from like Artlist. So a lot of the things, like if you watch the film, there's some scenes like, okay, Ketchikan, Alaska, right? I'm not gonna go up to Ketchikan, Alaska and shoot. The budget's not big enough. I'm not gonna get my own original footage. So not only do we have all the different cameras we use, but now I can see a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera. Oh, I'm getting a DJI, drone. I'm getting an Ari Alexa, like everything.
This is
Everything.
documentary filmmaking. This is
Yeah.
documentary filmmaking. It's like any source possible. Honestly, if I ever make a color grading course about documentaries, I'm gonna just take 100 different camera types and put them at the same time and say this is documentary.
The longest time I struggled with this with weddings, even just two different models of Sony, it would T-bone me so hard in the edit. So I would try, oh, let's try film convert. And I'm not dogging film convert or anything, but it never gave me the results I wanted. And it was always a mystery. So then I would bring a color chart to the weddings. I'd be like the only guy using a color chart just to like try to get these things to work.
That's your German. That's your German in you,
Well,
right?
exactly. Yes. But you like demystified a lot of these things for me. Your technology, quite honestly, the things you have developed really kind of made this much more of a breeze than I was fearing. Quite honestly. For instance, having your pre-clip, having your IDT, okay, and then putting it into the RE log C color space, which now has changed to the JP2, which I'm now getting into and loving it all. And now we can work with it in that color space, and then the output.
But that helps a lot. These things are made to accelerate, right? And it's
Yeah.
so easy, isn't it, Steven? If you think about
Yeah.
it, this is such a low hanging fruit to bring
Yep.
into your production, and suddenly, like, just streamline everything. It's so actually, like, it takes a little effort because you need to be disciplined, put things into pre-groups and this and that, right? The benefit is just wonderful. But maybe, yeah, let's have a look a little bit. How did you structure, those shots in your note trees? I'm really curious to see, that how you worked your
Yeah.
way through.
I had to go deep into my archives so I'm doing all this off of a regular slow ass archival hard drive, so it's gonna be pretty gnarly. By the way, let me just rewind real quick. I showed the final film to the two main contacts who really were the main contacts, and they cried because they're the children of these people, right? So they're the family, and they cried. And I actually took a little BTS of the whole thing, and they were tears and everything, and they loved it. A few days later, they go, "Oh my gosh, we love it so much. It wouldn't be complete without Randy, the guy who went to Tahiti."
The Tahiti guy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Shit. So
yeah.
Randy has to come
So
back in, all right?
yep, yep. He has to come back in. As luck would have it, they had a major boat malfunction. Like a part of their boat, there was a crack in it, and they had to divert to Fanning Island, and they're being flown back up. So you'll have an opportunity to interview Randy after the whole thing was completed. After everything was done. Yeah. Right. So talking about, okay, no harm, no foul. Reese and I went, we shot the interview. It's fine. And I told him, Randy, I've got spots for you here, 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 and here. So we gotta really pinpoint this mofo and let's rock it. Okay. So
That's another story. Yeah, the job's never. There's no final, right? Don't
exactly.
never call your timeline final.
I remember you were talking about using bunching up scenes in Color Lab. I haven't used Color Lab much, but if I knew how to do that in DaVinci Resolve, that would be great. But anyways, I would go through all of these and just, oh, that's red, red, red. I would just group them as so here there were all kinds of issues with red, with the various, I don't even know what all this, there were some issues, so I needed to kind of mess around. But here, look at this. There was an S-Log2, there was a GH5, a Rec 709 Sony. Look at this.
So these were all your different IDTs effectively, right? So you were
Yes.
grouping that depending on the camera types. Wonderful. Okay, okay, okay. That's a great.
Right.
Oh wow, look at your IDT. Interesting. Very nice. Very nice.
Here's the IDT, and this was one of those. So I remember when I took the film emulsion class that you did, it taught me a little bit about how film actually works, and then you got to kind of think about it in terms of, and you spoke about this with the launch of your Color Pro as well. Like think in terms of, well, what comes first? Well, first comes the lens, and then comes the film and the various layers of film. And I remember one of the things you talked about was putting the grain in the group pre-clip,
Yes.
which is what I did. I didn't use Grain Lab because at this point you had done your other grain. I don't forgot what class it was, but you
Yeah,
showed
yeah, it
us
was a
this
3D
technique.
grain. Yeah, I had it
Yes,
as a
3D grain.
texture on the. Oh my God, you got it all pre-release because that plugin just released now. So you had these textures
Yeah.
before they even got released. I love
Yeah.
it. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looked great. They look great. Excellent. And then you blend them. So that's your grain. Beautiful.
Right. Here are things where like my knowledge kind of like I did put in a little scatter here. Like it doesn't actually do much, but I have no idea really if this is the right place to put or if it to put it into clip.
It's a lens, so it should be at the front, right? Very nice, very nice. And a little like just a correction LGG, just a little bit corrects the exposure of the shot, just balances the shot a little bit before you put it down to the main grade, right?
Log. I think this was part of this whole thing that you got to bring it back. This was your technique.
That know this. Oh, I see what you did. This is for the blending. Okay, okay, makes
Yes, the
sense.
blending.
Okay, you blend it
See,
in
this
both.
is where my technical knowledge ends and why
Yeah, yeah,
it
no, I
must be a
understand. I
surprise to
understand what
people.
that one's doing. That one just changes it to be log again because you were blending it to for gamma. Yes, very good trick. Actually, you're right. You're right. That's it. I
Well,
love it.
Dado,
I love
I
it. I
just
love
took
it.
this. I
Yeah,
took this
yeah, yeah,
straight
yeah.
from you.
No, no, okay, good.
Like,
Listen, I do things in more than one way. Let me put it that way. Certain jobs are this way, but what you're doing it totally makes sense because you had a 3D grain and you were blending it in a much better gamma than this is Da Vinci's native gamma.
what I recall that whole film emulsion class was, I used your grain lab, the older version, but then when you showed when you showed us the 3D grain option, I thought, well, why I might as well just go with whatever the cutting edge is here, and I'll do that.
It is 10 times better, yeah, because it had color. It wasn't like just a gray grain, right? I love it. Then you have a primary showlet. What did you do with the showlet there? Just put a little.
That's Look Designer.
Okay.
So here, so And I would, it really depends on the scene. I would change things up a bit. Like here you can see most of the principal photography we shot, I just messed around, and I have my LG 42-inch here that I calibrated, all of this kind of stuff that you taught us early on. This was all stuff I learned from you in the pandemic. So it may not look all that great on what you're seeing here, but so I would just kind of look as Reese is working on the edit. I'm leisurely going through some ideas here, looking, and I'd add some post processing. Yeah, look and test and see and feel,
But the
and it would
skin
be
tones
this.
you got there,
See, that's another thing. I think since I learned from you, I've had way less skin tone issues. Like a lot of the stuff just works very much out of the box. I'm not even good enough to like, I would have really needed to go deep into YouTube and whatever to learn how to do all these qualifiers, but I didn't need to do any of that because really the heavy lifting done by Look Designer was just made it really solid. And then all I really needed to do, sure, on occasion I would use that spider tool that you like so much, and then it would just be, hey, where are we drawing the eye to?
beautiful. The windows, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And
That's
this is
really
your no
grading,
tree.
That's grading. That's grading,
Yeah.
That's grading, if you have a look that you have to create in secondaries, then you don't have a right look, my friend. That's what I say. If you don't have a look
Yeah.
just out of the show lot, then you need to rethink your look again.
Yeah.
Beautiful,
Yeah, and
beautiful.
that's what your technology and your teaching has just given me the psychological freedom to just experiment and not like it took a lot of the fear or mystery out of the whole, it just told me that, hey, this is doable, and there are ways to do this. There are
So
people out there who
interesting,
know how to
Steven.
do it.
Yeah, yeah. And you might as well just do it, like you don't want to learn on your own mistakes. But Steven, you know what is fascinating? It's fascinating to me to see like how is it. I have to tell you, there's one thing I can't teach, and I can't teach the aesthetic. You understand? I can't teach you when something looks beautiful. This is your grade at the end of the day. You need to
Yeah.
you need to dial the right profile still. You need to decide what look you're going for. You need to have that in your mind, this idea to how you want things to look. You need to have that kind of flow between archive and real and kind of current footage. You need to blend this together, and they still have to work, but give audience clear understand that we are moving from one time to another. It's not me. And to see that, how you got all of that working on such a high professional level, it's just unbelievable. Unbelievable. Now tell me now. I'm really now curious to understand this now, please. So what happens? You basically finish the short, right? What is this? This is a full documentary, right? How long is the whole project?
It's a hair under 30 minutes.
Okay, great. So it's still considered like as a short documentary, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. How did it happen that it got picked for all these festivals, and how did Emmy happen? Please tell me more about that.
So let me just say that, well, the showing itself at this, gala with 500 people, that was the original intent, right? And to entertain them and to show this story. And once it was over, I had person after person come up to me and say, you have to submit this to film festivals. You gotta put this out there. You got it. Really. What you've done for this family, and how you have done this family so much justice. Like, you really, wow, they were really blown away. And I haven't received that much praise and accolade in my life, whatever. So it was really took me aback. So I thought, all right, well, let's see what all this film festival stuff is about. So I went on Film Freeway and I submitted, and I don't know, out of my own pocket, I spent maybe, I don't know, $1,500, $2,000 on all these submissions. Well, yeah. Well, here's the thing though. Early on, Maui Film Festival. Okay, yeah, we'd love to have it. We don't have many screens and it's really condensed, and you know how tough it is and yada yada yada. But we have an online part of it. So you can be on that. I'm like, okay, great. I mean, doesn't sound, I thought maybe I want to see it on a big screen. So I was a little disappointed. Then some of the competition things, oh yeah, you won, great, wonderful, and what do you get out of it except being able to put some laurels around some words? And it was like, okay, it might help some marketing. It might show people like, hey, somebody somewhere found this to be pretty cool. So, and then one film festival after another. Meh, no thanks. Sorry. Even you know, we'll keep it on file for potential one rejection after another. I thought, whoa, well, this is interesting. And I was warned by people because I asked around some people in the business and what are the chances of a 30-minute piece, and well, you know, it's not a short because for shorts they want the under 10-minute stuff so that they can pack as many in as they can, and it's not a feature so it can't be in the feature, so is it like in this no man's land territory.
Yeah, that's true though. That's true.
Yeah, this doesn't mean it sucks, it just means it's not the right forum.
Correct. Which is
Okay,
unfortunate. Yeah.
that's cool. My job was done. The client was happy. It was tremendous success. Yada yada yada. And they're going to use it for various marketing and sales stuff. So whatever. And then I thought, and then I had missed the entry for the Northern California Emmys that summer when we had released it, but it was still eligible the next year. So come January, February, I submitted it. They thanked me for the submission.
What
and
category did you submit it in?
Documentary topical.
Excellent.
So months went by, and I'd forgotten about it. Oh, I'd moved on, doing other things. Like really, I thought that was it for this thing, and which is fine. It's just something we can be proud of, and it looks good, and it feels good, and people who saw it loved it. I just know nothing about distribution. I know nothing about all that stuff, and I just was a shot in the dark, and whatever, it didn't work. So next time I'll think about these things before I go into it, you know, if I want to do film festivals or
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
I was on another shoot, and during the break, I sat down and I looked at my phone and I saw this email from the San Francisco Emmy, you know, the guy, whatever his name is. I got an email from him and said, "Congratulations, you've been nominated, and the Emmys are going to be on June 15th. And
Book a
please
fucking
let me know if
tickets.
yeah, like what? Like what?" And I was so in this dream world that I actually forgot that I had a wedding sales call with somebody, and I missed the call. So I was just like in like Emmy heaven.
Listen, I don't blame you. You know, you should have felt like that. I would have been also like, you're kidding me. What do you mean? What another wedding? I'm really for San Francisco. I need to check my hotel. I need to be walking distance from the venue.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly,
exactly,
exactly.
exactly. I hear you. I hear you. And then tell me. So you
Well,
but you went to the evening when they were basically when they were giving the Emmys themselves. They didn't
yeah.
tell you anything before. You had no clue.
No clue, just you're nominated, and then they provided a document for all the nominees in the various categories. Some had a lot of entries, some had very few. With me, it was just me and one other competition, or whatever you want to call it, another nominee. I guess also this 30-minute runtime is not common in TV. I don't know, whatever. For some reason, it was just me and one other, and it was some Bay Area TV station that had done a piece on state-sponsored, you know, needle exchange and state-sponsored drug. So, and I'm thinking to myself, well, that's a piece that says something about society, you know, you know, it's got societal heft and whatever. And my thing is about a family that, however entertaining it is, it's a family that came down from Alaska and grew roots in Hawaii. Like, does that have any sort of societal weight? Does that make a big statement about, you know, current affairs? And
Yeah, 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 yeah. I hear
I
you. I
wrote it
hear you.
off. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, I wrote it off again. Like, you know, I told my wife and I said, "Hey, you want to go?" And she said, "Oh, I'd love to go. That sounds great." So then we started to think about, oh, well, gosh, what do we wear? And
Yes, 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 yes,
like, I don't know, you know, we in Hawaii, I wear my slippers. I don't have much to go with.
Yeah, then when you put the
Anyways,
shoes on, it feels very tight.
exactly.
Exactly. My God,
Exactly.
it's been a
Yeah.
while since I had shoes on.
And then another thing is like, hey, dude, you cannot go up there and wing it. If there's an off chance that you win this, you cannot go up on that stage and wing it. So you gotta know what to say.
Oh my
Okay.
God. Oh my
Yeah.
God, this is
So now I'm
amazing.
thinking to myself, well, I'm this is about the week before we were to leave, like in that time span, I'm thinking to myself, shit, I gotta figure out what I might be saying. So I can't sleep at night. And I go out into the kitchen, make tea, and I'm starting to like YouTube, Google, like search for best Oscar speeches and just like wait, and I'd be like, Dustin Hoffman and Meryl Streep and all this stuff. And mind you, I I'm not saying the thing that I want is anywhere near that caliber. I'm not saying that, but I wanted to get an idea of what do people say up there. And then I realized, dude, you only have 30 seconds. You're not gonna have 3 minutes like Dustin Hoffman did. So
Right,
just
right, 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 right. So the night happens, you arrive.
So I would say one interesting thing is that when we got there to the pre-party, there's a winemaker and you can drink their wine, you take the pictures on their faux red carpet and do video and then the 360 thing. And so we're like, shoot, let's just do them all. And so we did them all. And then some lady came up to us who is the treasurer of this Emmy thing, and she sparked up a conversation. Oh, you got to meet this lady, Pamela Young. She's the Hawaii board member. And so we were introduced to her, and she's actually on the news here, on the local news. And so I got to talking to her, and I said, hey, Pamela, I'm just curious, what are the criteria for winning this thing? Does it have anything to do with distribution? How many people have seen it? How big is the market, or anything like that? She's like, no, 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 not at all. It's just purely artistic merit. So I said, oh, like storytelling and color grading and things like that. And she goes, yeah, yeah, exactly. I said, shoot, we might have a fighting chance. And she already knows the winners. So she's just like, she turns around and like minds her own business. I'm like, shit, is it something I said? Do I smell what? I don't know. The Emmys start, and this is the first time I've ever been to one of these things. I've only seen a bit of these, whether it's the Golden Globes, Emmys, or Oscars on TV, and of course it's highly streamlined on TV. But oh my God, it is just one after the other. I mean, I don't know. There were so many categories, and what it's very interesting to see the people who had stage presence coming up, those who didn't, and it was very fascinating to see. And also this TV world. There was a guy who was a PBS podcaster, and he came up to me. He's like, I won't say who it was, but he says he came up to us in the pre-party as well. He said, "Man, I don't feel good in company like this. I just always want to leave right away. But I saw you guys, and I just needed to meet you because I had like this cool blazer on that had a Hawaiian print." Um,
Ah, okay. So
yeah, and
you
so
didn't look
and my
the
no, not at all. And I had an authentic mailele, which is very rare, like very beautiful lei. And my wife had this beautiful Lahala hat on, which is just, mwah, you know. And she also had wonderful lei, so she had an air of sophistication, but a touch of Hawaiiana on it. And so,
Oh wow,
yeah,
beautiful, beautiful. So you didn't just
so
went in like a penguin, no.
no, 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 no. It's because that was part of the thing that I had considered. Like, what do I want to say up on stage? So I would say, like, oh, I want to acknowledge the room. I want to acknowledge the creative collaborators. I want to acknowledge Hawaii. And I'm like, well, shoot, I can't do all those things in my 30 seconds. So I'm gonna express my love for Hawaii in what I wear. So you economize.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But it's also a great idea because you're, following the structure of what you're supposed to wear, but you're interpreting it in a little bit,
Yeah.
like your way, which is very nice. They like. I mean, they probably people liked it, I would say. And then the moment comes, and the winner is.
So yeah, so we were the seventh last category. I think 3.5, almost 4 hours go by with like,
God, this is.
you know, I had to go piss like 4 times, like a racehorse. And then I'm like, okay, it's almost that time. I could just kind of like do this, just straighten up. I'm nervous as all hell. And then she mentions the nominees, and then a short pause, and she goes, and the winner is Trilogy, It's in the Heart by Pacific
No!
Storytellers. And my wife had already set up in the middle of the room with her camera. I heard her voice just screaming, and I couldn't believe it. So
Oh
yeah, I
God,
walked
oh
up on
God.
stage. I was handed this right
This is
here.
the thing.
It wasn't actually this one. It was like a prop because they hand you the real one with all the information on it backstage.
It's
Yeah.
gorgeous. It's gorgeous, Steven. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. It's beautiful. I mean, can you
Yeah.
believe it, dude? Can you believe it? You kind
No,
of unbelievable.
yeah.
Unbelievable.
I couldn't believe it, and I was just so floored, and yeah, what ended up coming out of my mouth, what it had a bit of structure to it. I acknowledged the room and all the creatives in there, and then that PBS guy who was so enamored by our look, he was screaming with my wife, so I had my peanut gallery out there, hollering. So yeah, it felt very special, and I got all the text messages afterwards, and it was a wonderful time of celebration and a validation that all this stuff that we did together, really the three of us, and then all the planning on the client's part, they had such a huge role in this too, and their story. I was so honored then to
I
be
mean,
able to
they were the
write.
story. You
Yeah,
understand? They
yeah,
are the story. It's their story at the end of the day. Stephen. Like, can I ask you now something?
yeah.
What has changed in your life now since you won it in terms of what you feel like you would want to do as next? Like, was there a moment that you thought like what I will be doing in my life and what I'm doing in my life before the winning an award and what you're thinking today?
When I came to Hawaii, everything sort of transpired in a very organic and slow way, right? And I would just find opportunities would present themselves. I either chose to go in that direction or not. And so what this may or may not do is open more doors, right? And if more doors are presented to me, I can examine what's behind those doors and see like, hey, does this involve, like you mentioned before, does this involve some asshole director I never want to work for again? Okay, you just close that door, right? Or
Yes, yes,
whatever.
yes, yes,
You
yes.
can be, perhaps I'll be able to be a little bit more choosy about what I say yes to. I also want to assemble a creative team that is ready to go for these things. I mean, just a small team of me and two other guys is not going to cut it if the budgets grow a bit. I'm not looking for astronomical stuff. We all got to scrap and be efficient and all that stuff, especially these days. So yeah, I'm just really interested to see what might come our way. Yeah, I've had inquiries that just came, and I gotta remember. Okay, that company just called me. Interesting, but they might not be so ethical, and so I don't need to do it.
You're
You
so
know?
Hawaii. You're so Hawaii. I have to tell you, you're so like, I love that about you. I love that about you. No, I really want to thank God for giving you that award because you're so not, I mean, the answer you gave me is just, so grounded. Listen, let me tell you, most people, at least the ones, who kind of are not living in Hawaii, let's put it that way, lose completely their mind about themselves. They start believing their own bullshit to begin with, right? Because like this is what awards can do to you. You
Yeah.
win it, and then you think like, oh, I am special, and that kind of can transpire into a little bit negative experience as well. Sometimes. Not. No, I'm not saying it's a rule, but it can. It
Yeah.
can. It doesn't necessarily always have to be a pub. Only very few people have managed to win an Emmy. There is just a very small amount of them, even though there is like 4 hour every year, right, of awards, right? If you consider amount of people who work in this industry and amount of people who win it, it's just microscopic, right? And that really puts you in a very special place that you have certainly demonstrated to one of the biggest authorities in the industry that your work is exceptional. So I don't think you should how would I say, you need to accept it. You need to understand
Yes.
that as well, that what you created is exceptional. And I really hope that our listeners are also going to have the opportunity to view it because I think it's wonderful. I just, like I'm about to now see the whole thing. I saw the trailer and just the trailer itself just made me feel like I really, really, really want to see this, which is also, I love when the trailer does it to me, right? It doesn't tell me the whole story. It tells me like, I really want to need to see this. And I really hope that your openness to collaboration with other people opened some door for you that otherwise would have never existed.
Very much so. Yeah, I mean, I'm very much interested in collaborating more, and yeah, I mean, that's one of the biggest changes from being that one man band wedding dude to doing everything to then finally getting some editors on board to hand offload that, and now being able to work with others on these stories. It really makes it so much more magical because you get to share in the creation, right? We're doing this together. It's our baby, right? It's like when two parents get together and they love one another and they have a baby. This is our baby, and we get to watch it grow up. And I mean, it's really that feeling of like of involvement and love, really. So I'd love to make a love child with people. Let's do it.
Yeah, there is a next one. If anybody who is listening to this would be interested in getting in touch with you, whether just to congratulate or to potentially work with you as well, or even if they're coming to have a wedding, hopefully you are still able to do it for them. Because listen, there's nothing more I'd love for my wedding, and it's to have an Emmy Award-winning guy doing it. I mean, you're kidding me, I'd be like, no, can we have him, please? How would people be able to find you? Where are you? How we can get in touch?
Yeah, so one way is pacificstorytellers.com. You can get in touch with me that way. If you're on Instagram, it's instagram.com/Pacific Storytellers. So those are two ways.
Perfect.
Just DM me on Instagram, and then we'll take it off of Instagram and shoot the breeze over
Take
text or
from there.
email.
Fantastic. Stephen, I if there is anything I love is to hear stories like yours. They really inspire me. I really get so elevated when I hear impossible, become possible. And it's just if anybody would have asked me a few years ago, do you think you're ever gonna have a student who is one day going to win an Emmy Award? I said, yeah, it's possible, but I would have never thought who it is. And now that I finally discovered, that person, I'm so happy. I feel like, I feel like that little kind of contribution I gave by helping you, structure and tell story with color, was purpose of me getting up in the morning and putting those courses together.
It's huge, man. It's huge. Every one of the courses I took from you rubbed off on me one way or another and allowed me to look at a timeline and various cameras like this and not be totally shitting in my pants. So thank you for that, Dado.
No, thank you, Stephen, for being such an amazing guy. Honestly, it's inspirational, and I really, want, I'm gonna make sure that every one of my students listen to this story, because this is really what shows, a little bit, persistence and talent, can take you a long way. But I have to say, you're kind of, very, very specific Hawaiian, and I've noticed it when I was in Hawaii. You do let things go more, not fighting against the flow. Like, you more go with the flow. And what you just said, yes, things have kind of happened to me, but in their own time. I think this is something that all of us have to learn. My moment is about to happen, it hasn't happened yet, and it will happen. I think this is one thing that all of us have to remind ourselves every now and then.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, wow. What's the thing that gets in the way of our own progress? And really, it's the images we create in our head that when the moment comes, suddenly we bring this image in our head, which is which is conditioned emotional baggage. We bring that emotional baggage to the moment. And so the moment can never actually be what it is because it's always influenced by our own ego, by our own emotional conditioned baggage. From where I come from is that what even is this center that everybody seems to think is there? What is this I, right? And I just feel like things are coming through me all the time. Your information came to me during the pandemic. It somehow settled into my neural structure. Is that me or is that you? No, it's coming in, and when I'm when I'm old and decrepit, it'll go. When I die, it'll go. It's just everything coming in and out. There is no center really that is the genius Emmy winner, honestly.
Yes, it's true.
For
It's true.
real.
It's
Like,
true.
and that's where if there are collaborators out there who want to create something meaningful, I feel like the best is yet to come for myself and my team and anybody else who wants to join the fold. I think we can make something far better and far more meaningful because the world really needs it. So yeah.
I can't wait to do this interview next time when you do your next project. Let me tell you that. So
Awesome.
I'm really like, the moment you have your next project ready, let me know. And also, like, anytime you need any support or anything like that, you know where I live. So I want to congratulate you one more time on your huge success. This is wonderful, Stephen, what happened, and well deserved. Well deserved. Anybody who watches just a trailer and like, I hopefully you get some digital distribution for that, so that people around the world can stream it and watch it. They will all going to be able to see how great this project was put together. And you know what, it shows. So really,
Thank
really
you.
well done for that, and thank you for
I
being
I
part of this podcast as well.
I thank you so much, Dado, for being a mentor and a fellow collaborator, and I appreciate you so very, very much. You the
Oh,
mama. Love you, brother.
thank you, man. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank
see
you, man.
see you soon. See you
Aloha.
soon. Bye
Bye.
bye.